The constable's lantern sweeps the darkness of the brick-floored cellar. The stones have been disturbed. Something has been buried here. Beneath the house in which a man has lived, received guests, entertained friends, and professed grief at his wife's passing. What the officers uncover on that July night at number 39 Hilldrop Crescent is not a secret long kept from the world. It is the beginning of the most extraordinary manhunt the century has yet witnessed. Hello everyone, before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now let's begin. It is the winter of 1910. In the district of Holloway in North London, the streets of Camden Road are grey with January mist. The air, carrying the familiar weight of coal smoke and horse dung, and the damp chill that creeps from the River Thames across the city. Gas lamps illuminate the fog in pale circles. The sound of iron wheels on cobblestones rises and falls with the evening traffic. In the neighbourhood of Tufnell Park, along a terraced row of semi-detached houses set back from the road, stands number 39 Hilldrop Crescent. It is, to all appearances, an unremarkable residence. A homeopath and patent medicine dispenser named Hawley Harvey Crippen has lived here with his wife since the autumn of 1905. She is known in the music hall world of London by the stage name Belle Elmore, a vivacious woman with a talent for attracting admiration and a circle of devoted theatrical friends. He is a slight, quiet, short-sighted American, polite in manner, mild in bearing, eminence, barely distinguishable from 1,000 other professional men who commute daily through the grey arteries of the city. Mines on the evening of the 31st of January, the Crippens are hosting a dinner party. It will be the last occasion on which Belle Elmore is seen alive. Hawley Harvey Crippen was born on the 11th of September 1862, in the city of Coldwater in the state of Michigan in the United States of America. He was the only surviving child of Andres Skinner and Myron Augustus Crippen, a merchant. The family was of modest respectability. The young Hawley was given the benefit of an education suited to a man of professional ambition. He enrolled at the University of Michigan's Homeopathic Medical School and subsequently transferred to the Cleveland Homeopathic Medical College, from which he graduated in 1884. He married his first wife, Charlotte Jane, née Belle, and the couple had a son whom they named Hawley Otto, born in 1889. Charlotte died of a stroke in 1892, leaving Crippen a widower with a small child. Unable to reconcile the demands of an active homeopathic practice with the needs of a young boy, he entrusted Otto to the care of his parents, then residing in San Jose, California, and proceeded to establish his own practice in New York City. It was in New York that he encountered the woman who would become his second wife. Her name at birth was Kunigunde Makamotsky, though she had taken the name Corinne Turner, known to her intimates as Cora. She was 11 years younger than Crippen. Where he was reserved, she was forceful. Where he was meticulous, she was expansive. She harboured ambitions for the stage, aspirations that led her eventually to adopt the name Belle Elmore for her professional appearances. In 1894 they married. That same year, Crippen began working for a prominent homeopath and patent medicine manufacturer named James M. Munyon. In 1897, Munyon dispatched Crippen to London to manage the British branch office, Mainz, and the couple accompanied this professional transition with what must have seemed at the time every prospect of a settled life. London, however, proved to be the theatre of their mutual undoing. Crippen's American medical qualifications were not recognised in the United Kingdom, and he was therefore unable to practice as a physician in the conventional sense. He continued working as a dispenser of patent medicines, whilst Cora pursued her theatrical ambitions, first as an aspirant opera singer, an ambition that came to nothing, and subsequently as a music hall performer. After Munyon dispensed with Crippen's services in 1899, the doctor found employment with other patent medicine concerns, ultimately becoming manager of the Drouet Institute for the Deaf, where, in 1900, he engaged as typist a young woman named Ethel Lenave. In the autumn of 1905, Crippen and Cora took a lease on the house at number 39 Hilldrop Crescent in Holloway, a semi-detached property in a respectable though not fashionable district of North London. The house was large enough to permit the taking in of lodgers, which supplemented Crippen's income. It was also large enough, as was reportedly noted by both parties, to allow for separate bedrooms, an arrangement that had by this point become the settled condition of their marriage. Cora continued to perform in the music halls of London and had acquired, through her work, a wide circle of acquaintances in the theatrical world. She served as honorary treasurer of the Music Hall Ladies' Guild, a role that brought her into regular contact with the community of variety performers. She dressed extravagantly, was liberal with her company, fanned, and was known among her circle for the energy and vivacity of her social presence. In the opinion of those who attended the Crippen household, the domestic atmosphere was at times one of considerable tension, with Cora reported to be capable of violent outbursts and her husband appearing to endure them with characteristic quietness. By 1905, Crippen had established a private understanding with his typist, Ethel Leneve. The affair deepened over the following years, to the point that by 1908 the two had become openly intimate, entertaining each other at hotels while the outward forms of the Crippen marriage continued at Hilldrop Crescent. In this same period, there were reports that Cora had interests of her own outside the marriage, including a correspondence with an American music hall performer named Bruce Miller, letters from whom Crippen had reportedly seen pints signed with expressions of affection. The two, in short, had long since arrived at a state of mutual estrangement, maintained under one roof from some compound of financial necessity and social convention. By the early weeks of 1910, from Munyon's, Crippen's had been restructured from a regular salary to commission only, a change that introduced financial uncertainty at a time when he had been meeting the expenses of entertaining Leneve in London hotels. On the evening of the 31st of January 1910, Paul and Clara Martinetti, close friends of Cora's, arrived at Hilldrop Crescent for a dinner party. By approximately 1 o'clock in the morning of the 1st of February, they departed. They would never see Belle Elmore again. In the days that followed the dinner party, Cora Crippen was absent from all the activities that had previously defined her public life. She did not appear at her customary engagements. She did not attend the gatherings of the Music Hall Ladies' Guild. 2 letters arrived at the Guild in the following fortnight, purportedly resigning her position on the grounds that she had been required to travel urgently to America. The handwriting, however, was not in Cora's hand. When her friends and colleagues sought clarification from Crippen, the explanations shifted. She had gone to America, he said at first. Then, as the weeks became months, the account changed again. She had fallen ill in California and had since died. By the end of February, Ethel Leneve had taken up residence at Hilldrop Crescent and was observed by Cora's acquaintances wearing her jewellery and her brooch in public. The combination of circumstances was enough to move those who had known Belle Elmore to take their concerns to the authorities. The matter first came to the attention of Scotland Yard through Cora's friend Kate Williams, a strong woman known in the music halls as Volcatana. Later, 2 theatrical figures, the actress Lil Hawthorne and her husband and manager John Nash, pressed their acquaintance, Superintendent Frank Frost of Scotland Yard, to take the matter formally in hand. It was as a result of these representations that Chief Inspector Walter Dew of the Metropolitan Police was directed to make inquiries. On the 8th of July, Chief Inspector Dew visited Hilldrop Crescent and found Leneve there. He then proceeded to Crippen's place of business, where the 2 men met and subsequently returned together to the house. Crippen altered his account once more. He told Dew that Cora had not died at all. She had simply left him, he said, having fled to the United States with her lover, Bruce Miller. He had fabricated the story of her death, he explained, to avoid the personal embarrassment of admitting that his wife had abandoned him. Dew found the explanation, though irregular, not implausible. He searched the house and found nothing of immediate concern. He departed. The following morning, Crippen and Leneve had gone. Neither was found at the house, nor at any known address. Dew was summoned. He returned to Hilldrop Crescent with fresh authority and a determination to search more thoroughly. A series of 4 searches of the premises at Hilldrop Crescent had been conducted since Crippen first came to notice. It was during the 4th and most exhaustive, carried out on the 12th and 13th of July 1910, that Chief Inspector Dew and his officers discovered that several of the brick flagstones in the floor of the cellar had been disturbed. When those stones were lifted and the earth beneath them removed, the officers found buried there the torso of a human body. The remains were severely decomposed and entirely lacking the head, limbs and skeleton, which were never recovered. For senior scientific analyst to the Home Office, William Wilcox, subsequently conducted a chemical examination of the recovered tissue and identified Within it, traces of the toxic compound hyoscine hydrobromide, a scopolamine, a substance with legitimate medicinal uses in small doses, but acutely dangerous in quantity. The task of identifying the remains as those of Cora Crippen was undertaken in large part by Bernard Spilsbury, then a pathologist at St Mary's Hospital and a scientific witness for the prosecution. Mayence. Spilsbury drew the court's attention to a piece of skin from the lower abdomen which he maintained bore the characteristics of scar tissue, tints, consistent with a surgical scar known from Cora's medical history. Additional items recovered in association with the remains included curlers and hair consistent with Cora's colouring, and a fragment of the top of a pyjama jacket. Testimony from a representative of the manufacturing firm, Jones Brothers, established that the cloth from which the garment was made had not been sold, prior to 1908, firmly placing the date of burial within the period of the Crippens' residence at Hilldrop Crescent. Mayence. If you're finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let's continue. Meanwhile, arrest warrants for both Crippen and Leneve had been issued on the 16th of July. By that date, the pair were already aboard the Canadian Pacific liner SS Montrose, bound for Quebec. Leneve was travelling under a male disguise. Crippen had shaved the distinctive moustache, by which he had been widely known, and was allowing a beard to grow. They boarded at Antwerp on the 20th of July, travelling under the names Robinson as father and son. Captain Henry George Kendall, commander of the SS Montrose, had taken note of the fugitives before the vessel had steamed beyond wireless range. Leneve's disguise, though adequate from a distance, did not withstand closer scrutiny. Her manner and build, in Kendall's assessment, were undoubtedly those of a woman. Crippen, though without his moustache, was recognisable to one who had read the newspaper accounts of his disappearance. On the 24th of July, 4 days out from Antwerp, Kendall instructed his telegraphist Lawrence Ernest Hughes to transmit a message to the British authorities, the text of which has since entered the record of criminal history. The captain reported his strong suspicions that the London cellar murderer and his accomplice were among the saloon passengers, describing Crippen's shaved moustache and growing beard, and Leneve's unmistakable femininity beneath her boy's clothing. Chief Inspector Dew received the telegram and moved without delay. He boarded the White Star liner SS Laurentic at Liverpool, a vessel capable of considerably greater speed than the Montrose, and crossed the Atlantic in advance of the fugitives. He arrived in Quebec, alerted the Canadian authorities, and on the 31st of July, as the Montrose entered the St. Lawrence River and took on pilots, Dew came aboard in the guise of a maritime pilot. He approached Crippen on the bridge and, removing his pilot's cap, identified himself as Chief Inspector Dew of Scotland Yard. Crippen's documented response was brief. "Thank God it's over. The suspense has been too great. I couldn't stand it any longer." He held out his wrists for the handcuffs. It was the first occasion in history on which wireless telegraphy had been employed in the capture of a criminal suspect. Crippen was tried at the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court of England, before the Lord Chief Justice Lord Alveston, on the 18th of October 1910. His defence was led by Alfred Tobin. The prosecution was conducted by Mr. Muir, assisted by Mr. Travers Humphreys and Mr. Ingleby Oddie. The proceedings occupied 4 days. The prosecution's case rested on 3 principal pillars: the identification of the remains as Cora's through the abdominal scar evidence presented by Spilsbury, the presence of hyoscine hydrobromide in the tissue, a substance that Crippen had purchased from a local chemist before Cora's disappearance, and the pyjama jacket fragment, which the Jones brothers' testimony dated to a period after the Crippens had taken the Hilldrop Crescent lease. The defence maintained that the remains were not those of Cora Crippen at all, Mayence, and that a previous occupant of the house might be responsible for their presence. They further contested Spilsbury's identification of the scar tissue, noting that hair follicles were present in the specimen. Something, they argued, that should not be possible in genuine scar tissue. Sir Spilsbury held his position. The jury retired to deliberate on the 22nd of October. After 27 minutes, they returned a verdict of guilty. Crippen was sentenced to death. Leneve was tried separately at the Old Bailey on the 25th of October 1910, charged as an accessory after the fact. She was acquitted. The jury, it appeared, accepted that she had not been party to the murder itself, minds, whatever she may have known or surmised in the months that followed. Crippen, throughout the proceedings and thereafter, showed no remorse toward his wife, though he expressed sustained concern for the welfare and reputation of Leneve. He continued to protest his innocence. Before his execution, he composed a letter to Leneve in which he wrote, in words that were later reproduced in published accounts, "Face to face with God, I believe that facts will be forthcoming to prove my innocence." Mainz. Whether this was the statement of a man unjustly condemned, or of one who had never permitted himself to face the full weight of what he had done, the record cannot determine. He was hanged by John Ellis at Pentonville Prison, London, Mainz, at 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, the 23rd of November 1910. He was 48 years of age. At his own request, a photograph of Ethel Leneve was placed with him in his coffin. The grave, in the grounds of Pentonville, is not marked by a headstone, though it has been reported that a rose bush was in due course planted over the Tinus site. The remains identified at trial as those of Cora Crippen were interred at St Pancras and Islington Cemetery in East Finchley. Leneve sailed for the United States following her acquittal, and subsequently settled for a period in Canada, where she worked as a typist. She returned to Britain in 1915 and lived quietly for many decades thereafter, dying in 1967. The case did not diminish in public fascination with the passage of years. It entered literary culture almost immediately. Agatha Christie mentioned it in 2 of her novels. Erik Larsson's 2006 book Thunderstruck wove the story of Crippen's transatlantic flight, Mainz, together with the history of Guglielmo Marconi's invention of wireless telegraphy, the very technology that had brought about his capture. In 1962, a British feature film depicted the case. In 2004, a novel by John Boyne revisited it. In October 2007, however, a forensic scientist from Michigan State University named David Foran published research claiming that mitochondrial DNA extracted from the trial evidence slides did not match samples obtained from living relatives of Cora Crippen. The research further suggested that the tissue on the slides was male, not female. These findings were disputed by other scientists, Mainz, and in December 2009, the Criminal Cases Review Commission declined to refer the case to the Court of Appeal. Taints. The question of whether the remains beneath the cellar floor of Hilldrop Crescent were indeed those of Cora Crippen, and of whether Hawley Harvey Crippen was guilty of her murder, has not been finally settled to the satisfaction of all who have studied the matter. The house at number 39 Hilldrop Crescent no longer stands. The street itself was altered in the decades that followed. Where the cellar once lay, there is now simply ground. The wireless telegraph that carried Captain Kendall's message across the North Atlantic, long silent. Yet the words he sent, those few careful lines of Morse code tapped out above the grey ocean, reached their destination and altered, irrevocably, the course of what followed. Whether they sealed the fate of a murderer or of an innocent man is a question that remains, to this day, unanswered.